Hey guys, welcome to another boxing related video. Today I want to talk about a Tyson Fury interview, which is from the 24th of February 2021, so basically of last month. And I haven't really seen so many boxing channels, especially boxing channels in particular, who only cover boxing, talk about this interview. And the reason for it, or the reason why I'm making this video today, is because it's very important that you really listen to what Tyson Fury really has to say. Now I'm gonna put the link into the description so that you can watch the interview yourself. It's a pretty long video of 31 minutes and 27 seconds. Luckily it's divided by timestamps so that we can really jump to the questions that are really so important. Now, just to give you a brief summarization of all the questions that were asked. First of all, how he describes his current situation, then the look back on the Wilder rematch, because it was taken on the 24th of February, so only one day after the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder rematch, the second fight of them too. And then he describes the rest of 2020 basically, so after this fight. And of course COVID is there a huge topic, and he talks about mental health and mental health problems and issues and people who might have gotten into mental problems due to COVID, which is very interesting, by the way, if you're suffering from depression or mental health issues in general. So that is quite an interesting off-boxing topic, so to speak. But it really becomes interesting once we go to the point where he is asked about whether he's optimistic about fighting Anthony Joshua or not, because media has been covering this topic so much, and everybody, including the reporter here or the interviewer himself, thought that it's almost set in stone, and it's not really a question of if, but rather when this year the unification bout between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua is taking place. Now we all know that they are still, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, that is, in mediation or maybe even in arbitration. At least they are in court. That is what we know for sure. And they are still negotiating basically the rematch clause, because Deontay Wilder activated the rematch clause within time. And we still haven't got any announcement, considering Fury Wilder 3 now, as you have to call it. And this is something, of course, that might hinder the fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury from taking place in this year, at least, or at last. Simply because there's still a rematch clause, and the rematch clause was activated, and we will get to how Tyson Fury responds to Deontay Wilder, to his comments, to the possibility of fighting him again. But let's just first take a look at what he says about Anthony Joshua, because this is also very interesting, and might give you an impression of what's really happening right now behind the scenes. So let's start here.
Which I'm not that optimistic about of lately. He only fought in December, so December to June is only 6 months out of run, so he'll be a full year in front of me of activity, but I'm that much in front of him with skill, then a year of inactivity doesn't really do that much. But you know, you never beat being match fit and being active, out regular. Any fighter will tell you the same. If you're out regular and you're match fit, then you should be able to beat people who are inactive. That's for sure. But I don't make excuses, so I'm 3 years out the ring, come back and beat Deontay Wilder's ass.
So this is very interesting. So he's saying this, that he's been out of the ring for a year now, and even more than a year if we take the 8th of March 2021. which is today's date. And then he's saying, okay, well, Anthony Joshua has just fought in just fought in December, so it's very unlikely for him to take another fight, well, within 6 months maybe. On the other hand, he himself says that he's not quite match fit right now, so a match fit person, which would be then Anthony Joshua, should always beat a non-match fit person. So that really sounds to me that he's a little bit more afraid of fighting Anthony Joshua right now than vice versa. But let's go ahead.
I'm surely I can beat Anthony Joshua one at a time. Yeah, I'll be back.
And that's the typical Tyson Fury contradiction. Then he says, okay, he's able to defeat him with one hand behind his back, which is sort of a standard quote of his, because he's been saying that for, I think, basically the last 2 years. And well, let's go ahead. It's getting more interesting.
To me, I'm 16 months out of the ring. Years ago, if I would have had 16 months out of the ring, I'd have had an uphill battle to try and get back in the ring, because I would have been 400 pounds again. But today, I live a different lifestyle. I'm a different person. I'm a proper professional athlete these days. So I'm always ready. I'm ready to go today, tomorrow, next week.
So, what is it now? Are you ready or are you not ready? See, you cannot really make 2 or 3 statements that contradict each other at the same time, or basically in a time frame of 2 or 3 minutes, because you're not really getting any, you're not really answering the question, basically. If an interviewer or a reporter asks you, for example, well, what is your favorite color? You cannot say, well, it's red, but then on the other hand, on Sunday, I feel like it's yellow, and well, if I'm sick, it's blue. No, what is your favorite color in general? That's what we want to know. No, not contradicting yourself all the time.
3 months, yesterday, last month, I'm always ready to do the distance if needed.
I think the fans are ready for that too. I mean, you kind of dropped a bombshell on me here that you're not optimistic that the fight's happening, because it seems like all the reports are very positive. It seems like this fight was very towards you. How come you're not optimistic about the fight?
I'm not optimistic. They've had a full year to try and make this fight happen. Since the last Wilder fight, they were talking, even before the Wilder fight, they were talking about the fight potentially between me and Joshua. They've had a full year to make something happen. It's not happened as of yet. So, you know.
This is very interesting. Now we get a confirmation that they were actually trying to make the Fury Wilder fight, Fury Joshua fight happen, even though they couldn't really know what the outcome of the rematch between Wilder and Tyson Fury would be. So this is not only disrespectful, but it's also simply stupid, because you do not really know whether the fight makes sense once it is set in stone. I mean, let's simply say Tyson would have lost that fight, okay? And then what is the fight between Joshua and Fury worth then at the time? Not so much. So then, luckily in their eyes, Fury won the fight, although it was a very controversial one, but I don't want to get into this topic once again. And he said then, well, they had a year basically until now, and there is still no venue, no date, no nothing, and no contract signed. No press conferences, no promotion tour, no nothing. So this sort of reminds me a little bit of the Wilder Joshua situation back then, when everybody was talking about that fight, and everybody wanted to see the 2 unbeaten heavyweights at the time facing off each other, and the same thing that Wilder basically said then is now what Fury is saying. So he's ready, he wants to fight him, but there's nothing coming back from the other side, and everybody was saying, well, Wilder is ducking AJ, and there is a huge offer, and blah blah blah. And now it's basically the same thing for Tyson Fury. Now it's sort of like he's been eating his own words, because he was so confident back then that the fight happens, and there's nothing in the way, and everybody's interested in that fight. And guess what? Maybe Eddie Hearn is not so much, because he's still afraid that Anthony Joshua might lose, which there is a huge chance he will be. He will lose against Tyson Fury. And now you're basically sitting or lying there on a table or what, or on a couch, and getting massaged while you do not really know what will happen in the future. So it's really similar to the Deontay Wilder situation, but nobody's talking about him anymore. At least not so much in terms of or the way they were talking about Wilder before he lost the rematch against Tyson Fury. So let's continue.
Further forward today than it was a year ago.
If the fight were to not happen, why? Why would it not?
Because it's the way COVID is at the moment.
See, now he brings in another thing. Now he's bringing COVID in. Why didn't you mention it before? Now, do you want to blame the other party for not making the fight happen, or do you want to blame COVID for it? And then again, if COVID is such a big player at the time, which I think it is, then why doesn't it also be a big player for the fact that the Wilder, or should I say Fury-Wilder 3 fight is not happening, or couldn't really happen until now? So again, contradiction after contradiction after contradiction.
I don't think it's got much to do with the fighters. It's to do with the venue, date, place, site fees. It's to do with everything but the fighters themselves. So,
well, it seems to me that the climate or the environment for that is improving though, because obviously you have vaccines, you have the COVID is trending in a better place, and you also have these different locations that you mentioned site fees. They're willing to pay a lot of money to have an event, you know, like a heavyweight championship fight.
yeah.
So why do you? So I'm almost, it's surprising to me to hear you say that, because to me it seems like we are in a place going into this year, potentially this summer, where you could have, you know, a site fee really pony up for a big fight like that, and then have, you know, if not a full capacity fans, to have some fans in the arena. You're seeing it different than that.
I'm just saying it different. I'm a realist. I think if there was going to be an offer, there'd be one today, next week, or the week after. It doesn't, you know, I'm not optimistic about it. One, I don't think Anthony Joshua wants to fight anyway.
See, another thing. Now, beforehand he said it's everything but the fighter's fault, and now he's saying Anthony Joshua, who is actually the fighter he has to face one time, it's his fault because he's afraid, because he's ducking him. So again, a contradiction. And we've been talking now since about maybe how much is it at the moment? 13 minutes. And all we've heard of Tyson Fury is contradiction after contradiction. So it's really hard to take him serious, because he's really contradicting himself all the time, and that's nothing new. I know that Tyson Fury is sort of that character, but there's no worth in an interview of this kind, because you're not getting any real answers. You're simply putting everything in there that could be the case, but you're not giving us your real opinion. And why interviewing you then in the first place if you're not sticking to one thing?
Because he knows he's going to lose, and he likes the fact that he's a professional boxer, and after I get finished with him, he won't be anymore. So that's one of the reasons I'm not optimistic about it. And the other one is there's just the COVID at the moment. Even though you say we're in a better place, yes, we're in a better place than we was last year, but we're still not in a great place. Full country in the UK is locked down tight still. So it's not looking very optimistic from where I'm sitting now. And if there was so many offers on the table from abroad, foreign countries, then where are they? Why do I know about them?
What kind of outlook does that give you on 2021? I mean, do you start to think about opponents where it's not Anthony Joshua, so maybe the deal is easier to come back together? Like, what is your strategy?
Yeah, listen, I'm not saying if the fight doesn't happen this summer, it's got to happen sooner or later. But Top Rank, I've got to give me £2 fights this year, so we'll see. I will fight 2 times on ESPN. I don't care who it is.
See, that's the typical Tyson Fury approach. Once you achieved something, you go back to doing bullshit. Let's simply say it as it is. Because nobody wants to see you fight again another Otto Wallin, although he almost beat you. Nobody wants to see you fight another Tom Schwartz again. Nobody wants to see you fight another, basically, well, you cannot call a professional boxer a bum. That's really disrespectful. But nobody really wants to see you fight somebody or some kind of a fighter that's not on your level at all. I mean, give us at least somebody who has the chance to actually beat you, and not somebody who's simply a toy for you. And that's not, for me, that's not really the attitude or the heart of a champion, to go there and say, well, I'm fighting twice this year because Top Rank needs to give me needs to give me 2 fights this year because of my contract. But still, you haven't heard him talk about Andy Ruiz. You haven't heard him talk about, let's say, Dillian White. You haven't heard him talk about anybody, let alone Deontay Wilder. So it's very surprising that he's not mentioning his name right now, but we will come to that because the interviewer is pushing for it.
Yeah, I've got 2 fights coming up this year, regardless of whether it is Joshua or not. If it's not Joshua,
sorry for the ad. I cannot skip it this time.
we're looking to fight middle of April, early May, and then again at the end of the year. And if it is Joshua, then June, and then the end of the year again, bang bang, twice. So yeah, 2021's looking bright. All of this stuff that if fights are going to happen, if they're not going to happen, it's not really my concern, because whoever I'm fighting in the boxing ring, I get up for, I get ready for, and I go and destroy. And that's what I do.
Well, if it's 2 people who are not on your level at all, nobody cares about the fact if you destroy them or not, because we really want to see you now at the top, fighting the top contenders, simply because you are the lineal champ right now and you have the WBC belt. So it's not really about fighting basically up and coming guys or journeymen. So it's really about fighting the top of the division in your era. That's something you shouldn't forget, because that was everything you were talking about before you had the belt. Now you have the belt, and now you're sounding like somebody who's about to retire. Although I'm thinking that you're not really wanting to retire, but you really want to cherry pick your opponents, which doesn't make your career seem any better. Let me say it as real as it gets.
So it doesn't matter to me if his name's AJ, PJ, or CJ. He can still get an ass kicking. I'm not bothered.
If in a perfect world, in a non-COVID world, you guys, if you and AJ the fight would come together, and let's just in this scenario say there's going to be 2 fights, right? 2 fights, you guys fight, and you fight again, regardless of what happens. Where do you think would be the best places to happen? In your mind, ideally, like where would you like to walk out? Where would you like to take that?
To me, it doesn't matter. I'm a prize fighter, so I go where the event is. So it doesn't matter if it's in England, America, New York, wherever. It can be Asia, it can be wherever it wants to be. It's a boxing ring to me, as I'm concerned. The chapter's done, I've beaten twice.
Okay, now we're coming to the Wilder thing.
I go where the event is. So it doesn't matter if it's in England, America, New York, wherever. It can be Asia, it can be wherever it wants to be. It's a boxing ring to me. I just want the victory. I'm there for the win. That's it. And I go home.
You said it can be anybody. I wonder if that anybody includes Deontay Wilder. And I know you've already discussed this, but can you just put a bow on the Deontay Wilder situation? Is he still trying to get a trilogy with you? Is that still a possibility?
Of course he's still trying, and of course it's still a possibility. But you can simply see by the look of Tyson Fury's face that this is something he obviously didn't want to talk about. Although it's now something Although it's a vid, and I sort of stopped the video where both men really look stupid, but you can really see from the face of Tyson Fury that this is something he didn't really want to talk about in this interview, but he had to. So now let's see what he's saying or answering to the question.
Where do you stand in terms of your chapter with Deontay Wilder?
As far as I'm concerned, the chapter's done. I beat him twice. Absolutely smashed him to pieces the second time. Wasn't even a contest. They had a full year to make another fight. I agreed to about 7 dates. None of them materialised.
Well, we know by now that the same thing that you were talking about when you were discussing the fight between Joshua and yourself goes for Wilder and for anybody else too. So there is COVID. You wanted to have people in attendance, which wasn't allowed at the time. There was no venue. There wasn't enough money. Even your own manager, Bob Arum, said that, and even he said that, well, it's not because of Deontay Wilder, it's because there's no venue, there's no people in attendance, and we cannot pay you off if we have no live gate, because the pay-per-view numbers alone do not do enough money. So that's basically it. And don't say the contract has expired, because if COVID is the reason for all this mess in the world, then you cannot simply say a contract expires simply because of, well, circumstances that do not allow any party to fulfill their part of the contract. No, Mr. Tyson Fury, that's not the way you can escape.
And the contract expired, and now he's now nothing. There's no fight between me and Deontay Wilder. But Deontay Wilder's got more on his brain than Tyson, I'll tell you that. I think he's lost his marbles. I think Deontay Wilder is struggling mentally at the moment.
See, that's also the mind game of Tyson Fury. So he basically uses his own weaknesses or his own weak past and puts it on somebody else simply because he doesn't like what they were talking about him. So it's not simply insulting somebody else, but it's really making other people look weak, vulnerable, stupid. As he even said, he lost his marbles. And the interesting thing about it is, though, that he doesn't really say, I didn't cheat. So after all these months, after basically exactly a year after the second fight, with ESPN, or in an interview with ESPN, we should have all clearly heard out of his mouth, all these allegations are not true, I didn't cheat. That's what he should have said. But not simply saying, well, he lost his marbles, and he's stupid, he's suffering from this, he's suffering from that. That's not gonna give you any more credibility, because if somebody really asks you, did you do it? And you are not answering to the question and talking basically something else, everybody will feel like, well, maybe he did actually do it, because he's not really defending himself, he's simply blaming the other person, but he's not defending himself, he's not answering the question. So very interesting what will happen here.
Physically and emotionally. It's not just me looking at him from the outside, from a person who's already been there and done what he's doing. Like, obviously the beating he took in the fight has really affected him, because he obviously thought that he couldn't lose to anyone, and then when he's been there and been beaten like that, then it's obviously had a mental effect on him.
Hey, do you have sympathy, or are you disappointed with them? You guys had 2 great fights. Two great fights, really, you know, that captured the attention of the boxing world, the sports world, and then for him to kind of react to the loss in the manner in which he did, has it kind of soured these things?
Yeah. Well, it's spoiled the way that I look at him as a man. Like, to make a million excuses after a fight, after you've lost to somebody, it's unsportsmanlike conduct. If he'd have beat me in the same manner, or any man, I put my hand out, shook his hand and said, fair play, I've lost to a better man on the night, good luck and God bless you. And that's the difference in men.
No, that's the difference, whether you're really playing fairly or not. And unfortunately, we still haven't got any court approval for all the allegations Deontay Wilder had against Tyson Fury, but simply by the fact that you're not defending yourself, you're not even saying I didn't do it, but you wanna sort of put the thing under the table and try to get away without answering the question directly, tells me that there's really more to it. And simply saying, well, he's beaten mentally, he cannot come back, he's not intimidating anymore, these are all old stories, you know. That's simply like saying when Tyson lost to Buster Douglas, he had no chance to come back. Guess what? He was 3 years in prison and became a heavyweight world champion for the second time again. So how can you not come back if you're still in training camp, if you're not in prison, and you only lost one fight, and that being a very, very controversial one against you, Mr. Tyson Fury, and you're not really saying anything about it. Now is the time to say, basically, I didn't do it. But maybe he's not allowed to speak about it too, because they are still in court. Who knows? But I simply wanted to show you, and you can watch the rest of the interview as well, that he's not really saying I didn't do it, and that's weak. That's weak. If you're really a man, like you say you are, you should really have a solid point, have a solid opinion about the thing, and say what you really think about it. And not say, well, he's maybe mentally ill, he's got other problems, he's got this and that, and unfortunately because of this and that, he's not going to return, so there will be no third fight with him. Yeah, but that's what I got for you all, and let me tell you what you think in the comment section below, and see you the next time.